I want you all to get your clicking fingers ready. Get ready, hover over that share button because this will be a must share to everyone you know, I promise. Mark Carney says that Canada has secured 20 trade deals. We've all heard it. Every single party, everyone's heard it. 20. That's the number that keeps being repeated by our Prime Minister. That's the narrative that keeps being sold to each and every single Canadian across this country from coast to coast. That's the headline the mainstream media is using that Canadians are supposed to believe. But here's the question that nobody, including that media, seems to be asking. Where are these deals? Now, it's not just where they are. We know we can't find them. We can't read them. There's no points even being given to us. But where are the contracts? Where are the binding commitments? Where are the guaranteed purchases? Where is the actual evidence that billions of dollars in new trade is about to hit the Canadian economy? And it's a good question because when you go looking for it, you simply cannot find it. There are no details, no point forms, no summaries. You don't find 20 trade deals anywhere. Go ahead and Google it. Instead, you find something very different. And if Canadians don't understand this difference, very, very soon we may be in a lot of trouble. We are about to mistake press releases for prosperity. And if we don't learn the truth about deals, how trade works, and whether they're even legally binding, we're in big trouble. Let's tap into the truth.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to your Friday morning edition of Tap the Maple. It is the end of the week, and this is a biggie. Get ready to share and get ready to comment because we're not just talking about trade. We are breaking down the differences between what's been actually announced by Mark Carney and played up as true, what was actually signed, if anything, and what will actually happen out of those things that have been signed, because those are three very different things, and they are extremely different from each other. So let's start with the claim itself, the 20 deals. You saw it in this video last Sunday. You've heard him say it over and over and over again. You'll hear politicians and media say it together. They'll all join hands and say Canada has secured over 20 trade deals under Mark Carney in his first year. But when you go to the actual government language, it doesn't say that. Instead, it actually says more than 20 economic and security partnerships. And that's an important distinction because that's not semantics. That's just the strategy behind how they've been deciding to sell this to you. Because trade deal means something very specific. It means trade is being set up and very shortly will begin. A negotiated, ratified agreement with defined rules that directly affect how trade flows between two countries. However, a partnership can mean almost anything. It does not have any legally binding language to it at all. And when you unpack those 20 plus economic and security partnerships, here's what you will actually find. Some are real trade agreements. Again, not designed to start the trade yet. You need a full agreement for that. Some are MOUs on top of that. Some are cooperation frameworks. Some are financing announcements. Some are regulatory discussions. And some are simply agreements to negotiate later. Basically, an agreement to have an agreement at some point to agree. So right away, we should all be raising an eyebrow to all of this. The 20 deals itself narrative fully collapses just knowing those particular points because it's actually not 20 deals. It's a bundle of different things being marketed as one thing, and that's why you call it economic and security agreements. Now, here's the thing. We need to stop speaking generally. That's the problem. Anybody who attacks these 20 agreements, including myself, has not given you enough receipts to talk specifics about why this is total BS. When Canada engaged India, what did we actually get? Well, we got multiple memorandums of understanding. And in business, those are just an agreement to continue talking. There is nothing more to them. And a commitment we also got to negotiate a future trade agreement, which, by the way, no no meetings have been set for. Not a completed deal, not market access today. Trade has not begun with India, just simply a plan to negotiate. Then we shift over to China. The much maligned Chinese agreement is actually not really that much of an agreement. It's the same pattern. MOUs across sectors like energy, food safety, and cooperation frameworks. Keep an eye on that word. Not binding export commitments that start tomorrow. In Qatar, MOUs, exactly the same thing, a memorandum of understanding that we will get into joint economic discussion at some point. In fact, they've formed a joint economic commission, letters of intent to meet again. Again, no meetings continuously booked. Indonesia. Now, here's where this real agreement comes in. At CEPA, which we know is a real agreement, the tariffs are reduced, the barriers are lowered, but here's the key. Even in that case, there is no clause that forces Indonesia to buy Canadian goods in any way. And this, my friends, is the rub, because most trade agreements provide zero actual legal binding commitment to buy from us. It creates access, but it does not create demand. So out of the so-called 20 deals, what you're really looking at so far is a mix where some are not deals at all, some are very early stage agreements that haven't even been shared with you or even opposition MPs for that matter, and even the strongest ones that form actual agreements don't actually agree any trade will actually happen, simply that the doors are now open. Now, let's talk about the number that gets people really excited. How about that? We like to get excited by numbers here, don't we? Especially Mark Carney numbers, because oftentimes you're going to hear things like, we've signed $5 billion in agreements, $10 billion in opportunities, $48 billion in potential trade. Listen to the words closely that he uses, because here's the part a lot of you aren't getting explained to yourselves. Those numbers are almost always at most a projection. They are not anything that is guaranteed. In fact, they are best case scenarios, long-term possibilities, and conditional outcomes. What they are specifically not is money in the Canadian bank. They are not signed purchase orders, and they are not guaranteed economic activity now or in the future. So when Canadians hear billions, they get a little titillated. They get a little excited. Sometimes some of them, especially liberals, pee themselves a little. They assume we've got millions and billions of dollars of incoming revenue. But what it actually means is if everything goes right, everything in the agreement, that maybe over time we might get that. That is not the same thing. And it's being presented like it is the same thing, like it's guaranteed, like it's coming in, throw open the doors, we're rich as a country now, and F the United States. But let's assume for a second that every single one of these agreements works perfectly. There is no issue with any of them. It's all going to work out. Then there's still a problem. Canada has to execute the trade itself. And that means that we need to be able to ship the goods. We need to be able to scale all of our production. We need to move our resources. We need to clear our ports and build more. We need to manage the logistics of shipping. We need to handle the timelines. All of that is completely outside of the agreement itself. And here's the reality. Canada does not currently have the infrastructure as a country to fully capitalize on large-scale global trade expansion. Not at all. That's not my opinion. That is just simply the truth of where our nation sits in terms of trade. Even the government is pushing new investments in ports, trade corridors, transportation infrastructure. Why are they doing this? Because we're not built for it yet. All of these potential MOUs and all of these potential deals could not be executed today without those resources being built. Sorry, I'm going to break everything. We are being tricked here. Before we've built the system required to deliver on any of this at all, we are being told it's already done. And that's where you cannot let yourself be fooled, Canada. Because now we get to the most important part of this entire conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, you might have hated this class in school, but geography matters. It really matters. You cannot negotiate geography. You cannot sign an agreement that changes the distance between two countries. Canada and the United States share a border. There is no changing that. They share an integrated supply chain. They share energy systems and manufacturing pipelines. Again, there is no changing that. That's why billions of dollars cross our borders every single day, most of it via truck, 400,000 truckloads every day. Not because of a press release, but because it's efficient, because it's practical, because it works, and that trade can be done quickly. No, now, if you sit there and you compare that to, say, shipping goods to Indonesia, moving products to the UAE, exporting into parts of Europe, what do you get there? Well, nobody's a land border with us. You get longer routes, you get higher costs, you get more complexity, you get a lot more risk. And so when the government talks about replacing or offsetting U.S. trade, you all need to call BS right away. Because what they are doing is they are ignoring the single biggest factor in global commerce: geographical convenience. You see, what trade we do with the United States actually happens. What we may do with the other agreements might happen. So here's where it becomes dangerous. Canada is not just adding new trade relationships. We are simultaneously risking our most important one, doing it on purpose because we don't like one man who happens to run that country for only 3 more years. And now they are the backbone of our economy, whether we like it or not, and always will be because of geographic relationship. If that relationship is now weakened, even slightly, we don't lose theoretical trade, which all 20 of these other agreements, so quote unquote, are. We lose real existing trade, and that is very different. Trade that is actually happening today. That's the billions we lose. No wonder you're afraid to lose your job, because trade supports your jobs today. That's actual trade moving today. None of the other 20 agreements are moving yet. And what are we replacing it with? We are trying to replace it with a memorandum of understanding, with frameworks for deals, with potential for billions to diversify, with possibility and no guarantee of execution. That is not a fair trade-off. That is a huge, massive gamble with our future as a country. We are taking trade that is happening today and trying to trade it for trade that might happen tomorrow. And we're going to kill it today. Year after year, you weaken execution with your largest partner if you do that. While slowly, you're building out difficult, expensive, long-distance trade elsewhere. Tell me where the logic is in that, no matter how much you hate Donald Trump. Then what happens with that? Well, you don't become more diversified, Canada. Not one bit. In fact, you become less efficient. Now, all of a sudden, your trade takes longer to get somewhere, there's less orders, and you've spurned your biggest partner. You're less competitive as a nation. You're more dependent on complex logistics that don't even exist yet today. That still has to be built. And over time, you lose tremendous ground because you lost the partner you were already making the billions with. That's how economies don't collapse overnight. They erode into oblivion, quietly, gradually, and by stupid leaders who have no idea what they're doing. And then they lose it all at once. It's gone. And this is where we wrap this up, because it's time for you to hit the share button. Canada absolutely should diversify. I get it. That's no problem there. Not arguing that one bit. But diversification is not, and I ask you to write this down, it is not announcements, it is not MOUs, and it is not theoretical projections. And even if those exist and become actual trade, the execution, the infrastructure, and the real trade flows are also needed. And the money has to come this way, because otherwise it doesn't work. So most importantly, diversification has to include the United States, because that money already comes here today and we can't lose it. We can't ignore it, we can't antagonize it, and we sure as hell can't gamble with it, because you don't replace your strongest economic relationship with the possibility that we might trade with the UAE, the EU, Indonesia, China, and others. Instead, you build around it with those nations. Start to attract the capital into the country while building on the capital you already have. Expand it. Don't replace it because it's not going to be replaced right away. Everything else is not strategy. It's simple risk, and it's too much risk. And Mark Carney is putting this country in danger. Canada cannot afford to get this wrong. That's how you tap into the truth. Hit that share button right now. It is time to share this out. That message we must teach to everybody. Remember, here's the summary. U.S. trade is happening already. We are making money. They are making money. Trade is happening, regardless if some of it has slowed down. It is happening. It is real. It is not going away unless we fail at the CUSMA negotiations. Now, when you have these other agreements, the MOUs and the agreements that secure our country more, whatever the hell he's talking about there, those don't exist yet. Those are agreements to start talking about agreements. So we are willing to spurn a partner who trades billions with us already and then try to get into these agreements, which, by the way, have to travel further with more complex systems. And now you're not even going to get the same billions because it's just too long and too far away. Your neighbor to the south, literally attached to your land border, is your top partner, no matter what. We can't get rid of that. Final conclusion, it's only that way. And now you can start sharing. Don't forget to like, subscribe, join the conversation down below. I need to go take a breath and probably another coffee as well. We'll see you again at 6 o'clock Eastern time tonight for your evening edition of Tap the Maple. We will also see you at 7:30 a.m. tomorrow on Saturday for your weekend edition and on Sunday as well. We'll see you then. Have yourselves a great Friday.